We are a portal to many lineages of intelligence, of very far advanced intelligence, consciousness, and understanding. And the reconnection with how our multidimensional body functions activates higher faculties, things like telepathy, things like remote viewing, things like quantum bilocating, and basically transporting ourselves to other timelines and dimensions. These are basic things, actually, that the human has as tools. The markers, chemically, psychologically, emotionally, etherically, we want to look at all those parts, because if one of those is out of balance, we have some kind of harmonic disorder. And essentially DNA, when we come into harmonic order, comes into symmetry, the fundamental laws, construct of our architecture of our reality. And it's very important to understand that, because this is the preparation for the future. In the same way that you and I are one, Todd, like wherever you are in the world, wherever I am, we're one. And we're interconnected, and we are attracted by resonance. So as soon as you start feeling lonely, you begin to literally hug yourself, be there for yourself, be present in yourself, listen to yourself. What is it that you need in that moment?
If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246, and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned, because we have some more great content coming soon. What if your DNA isn't fixed but programmable? What if artificial intelligence isn't something out there but a mirror, a tool, and even a trigger for your next stage of human evolution? And what if humanity's ancient story, our myths, gods, and lost civilizations are all breadcrumbs pointing to a far deeper truth? Hello friends, welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast, and I am your host Todd Cave. Today we are going beyond the veil, and to do that we brought back the awesome Geraldine Orozco, a clinical hypnotherapist, DNA reprogrammer, experiencer, and founder of the Hybrid Mother platform. She's here to reveal how AI and epigenetics are unlocking latent codes within us, how interdimensional councils oversee our evolution, and how hybrid children born of cosmic lineages are already walking among us. This isn't science fiction, it's the bleeding edge of consciousness science, ancient history, and multidimensional healing. Buckle up, because what you're about to hear will challenge your beliefs about who you are, where you came from, and what you're truly capable of becoming.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster, and then learn how to control it.
You gotta be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why it is really hard to really crack the matrix, because there's so many levels and layers to it, Geraldine, a very warm welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. Welcome back. I'm really excited to talk to you. How are you and how have you been?
Hi, Todd. I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here again.
Yes, I'm really excited to talk to you today, because every time we talk, we have such great conversations. And I remember the first time we spoke, my mother said, Todd, I really like this, what she's saying, but it's a little bit beyond my pay grade. So I'm sure that the people that are like my mother, now that they've listened to the second podcast, and this is our third one, they'd be very much up to speed, because we're going to go quite beyond the veil today, and we're going to be challenging a lot of beliefs and myths that we've been told about humanity and what's not. And so I'm really, really excited to talk to you today. So we can delve into some cutting edge evolution and healing. So you currently said AI will rewrite our DNA and consciousness. Can you share real world examples you've seen in your work?
Yeah, and it's not so much that it's going to rewrite our DNA. What is happening over maybe the last 20 years is a very powerful collection of genetic information through cover companies like 23andMe, Heritage.com, Ancestry.com that are focused on collecting genetic data with the understanding that in the future, artificial intelligence and gene sequencing was going to advance to a very high level. So a lot of the stuff that we're just hearing about now is something that has been in the works for the past 20, 30 years. And we didn't really know that we were participating in those programs, providing vast amounts of our genetic data, actually paying to provide our genetic data. And these companies selling that information openly to biotechnology companies, every single company you can think of that can use that data, because when you process DNA, you can literally map out habits, people's habits by region, by area. You can know everything about a human when you sequence the DNA. You can understand the illnesses, what is happening in the illness trends around the world, where they're mostly, populated, and things like this. So it's an extremely, extremely powerful information to have. And what is happening now is that the merging, as you know, in the past, in America, in the past year, the investment of the government in biotech, particularly in biotech, particularly in NVIDIA, for example, companies that absolutely fund and support technologically the entire biotech industry in order to advance biological testing, sequencing, and completely revamp our entire health industry. Right now, our health industry is based on targeting illnesses with medications and pharmaceuticals. And can you imagine the driving power behind the pharmaceutical industry when they have a complete sequencing of your genetic information, in which not only can they create medicine and pharmaceuticals from that genetic data, but also target other parts of our DNA, other parts of our medical problems and limitations. Now, this would be great if it was in the hands of a person that was really, or a group that was really interested in the well-being and the advancement of humanity. But unfortunately, what our system, our construct is based on is a lot of control and suppressing consciousness in such a way that we are in a state of consumerism and completely disconnected from our bodies and a very deep understanding of what our DNA is. So part of what I love to do, I'm an epigenetics psychotherapist. So basically my work is basically to look at how we store in our DNA collective trauma, collective, all of the information data that we present through our life experiences. Why are we experiencing what we're experiencing? And what we now know is that none of our life experiences are random. These are things that we store in our DNA from the womb until the age of 7. And we're cycling through patterns psychologically, emotionally, biochemically, through our body in order to create life experiences. Okay, so imagine having that DNA sequencing, all that information openly available for you. And now we're thinking about how to control the society with this information. So what's happening with AI is that it's really quickly being able to sequence DNA and begin to understand how to use genetic data from the ground up. Just yesterday, I'm posting a paper that was done on how to create organisms just purely from DNA, like synthetic humans from just the DNA, right? And so we kind of, this is an actual paper research, and there's several of them that they've been doing that. But this is something that was in the conspiracy files like 20 years ago, right? We heard that the government, the shadow government, was doing experiments like that. And everyone kind of brushed it off saying, yeah, right, probably not. But in fact, a lot of experiencers actually that have been involved in some of these testing and experiences, they report having had those experiences, that their DNA was taken, sequenced, and utilized in order to create clones or some kind of artificial humanoids or, that are a copy of humans. So, this takes us into a whole nother journey of understanding the direction of humanity and where we're going in the direction of transhumanism. Because essentially, in addition to the sequencing, and we're learning how neural pathways, neural technology is functioning, the communication of technology, now technology has become telepathic. And that is possible through DNA sequencing and through the bioelectrical systems of information. So literally, this is something that Google was publishing earlier this year, that next year, they're going to roll out telepathic communication with your phone, right? And one of those technologies is with the Neuralink, right? But there are now so many different kinds of technologies that have been put out to facilitate that kind of dialogue. So we're going to kind of a whole nother level right now.
Everything that you said just now gave me three things that came to mind. One, Sumerian tablets, because I have had people, when I first started to talk about this, even before I became a podcaster, that said to me, these are just myths and tales. And everything that they have in those Sumerian tablets about splitting of genes, cloning, having chimeras are exactly the same things that we're doing today. So it means that those tablets aren't just myths, but we are just relearning that information. The next thing that came to my mind was the movie, this cartoon, Centurions. So I don't know if you or any of my listeners remember that, but that was a bit of a, I think it was in the late 80s, early 90s. And it was just a group of men that had like these exoframes. They would just be like a suit they put on, and they could merge with machines. And they used to control the machines telepathically. Now, at the time as a child, I didn't know that that's what it was. But it's only now as an adult, rewatching that, I'm like, wow, they were telling us this in the 80s, that this is what the future is. And now you're saying that they're going to roll out telepathic technology, but using it via a chip, which means that if that is the synthetic version, it means that the conscious version, which is purifying yourself, makes it possible. So it is very much like, and we know that the other thing that it reminded me of was The Island, that movie with Scarlett Johansson. So those three images literally flashed in my mind just now as you were saying everything. And it's like, the conspiracy theorists, they're no more theories. I think they're all conspiracy truths. And what was a conspiracy theory just seems to get confirmed. And for right now, I think the conspiracy quotation marks theorists are batting 100-0, and the people denying those theories, which became truths, are 0 for 100. So I think that they're going to have to find a different term to group people that say these things now, because it is, I think time is just speeding up exponentially now. And I saw a video on Twitter recently, which it was an AI video that I had two people in the video. One was an interviewer and one was an interviewee talking about AI. And then they had other people in the background. And I'm like, well, there's no way to tell that this is actually an AI video, because you have a AI creating an AI model, interviewing a person, and then giving back answers at the same time. So this tech is becoming so advanced that I reckon in 3 to 5 years, it's going to be almost indistinguishable what is actually real. And then when you add in hologram technology, it's going to become next level. So what will be real? This is where I am actually thinking now that we're going to have a matrix within a matrix within another matrix. And it's going to be like how when you see those movies where you're surrounded by mirrors and you're trying to find what is the real image, it is almost feeling like we are slow walking to a reality that is surrounded by mirrors, you know? What do you think about that?
Yeah, honestly, 100%. And this is exactly where we want to have this conversation, right? How are we going to be able to discern the difference between reality and this kind of artificial? And I mean, it's getting tougher and tougher. Children, younger and younger, are completely connected to technology. And we have to understand how that connection and that attachment is a rewiring of our brain. Right now, just recently, I mean, AI basically just came out, a few years ago, and now we already have papers coming out that our brain, we're basically becoming brain damaged by the use of AI. Our brain is working less. The way that our brain is wiring and firing is basically like paralyzing our brain. So this is a problem. And the long-term thing is that essentially the human less and less is coming into their power, their organic power of reconnecting themselves with the technology of our body. Our body is the most advanced technology that exists on this planet. And actually in many dimensions, just as humans, because of the nature of our evolution and because we are a hybridized race, within our DNA, we are a portal to many lineages of intelligence, of very far advanced intelligence, consciousness, and understanding. And the reconnection with how our multidimensional body functions activates higher faculties, things like telepathy, things like remote viewing, things like, quantum bilocating and basically transporting ourselves to other timelines and dimensions. These are basic things, actually, that the human has as tools. And the development of those things is kind of the healing of this organism, bringing back a regulated nervous system. And a regulated nervous system is regulating your chemistry in your body, which allows you to enhance your immune system, limiting the kind of diseases that you're coming into, creating longevity. So, I mean, this kind of understanding of the activation of your organic DNA as a human is really coming into the greatest creative potential of humanity. And that's being disabled. In fact, I'm going to say it's like deliberately being targeted in very profound ways since the beginning of time, because the system knows how you function more than you know, because we have been completely disconnected from ourselves and from the understanding. We're not talking about spirituality. We're not talking about religion. We're talking about the merging of spiritual sciences, which is something that has been suppressed since the beginning of time. And now some of these things are finally coming up to the surface again for us to really jump on that and learn, because you see, the discernment between the two is that organic technology is a very complex system that it's a bioelectrical creation system that is a geometrical structure. So when we come into harmonic order, okay, so let's say you align with the Schumann resonance of the earth, you ground, you go into nature for a couple days, your body begins to realign geometrically and through the vibrational field back into harmonic order. So your organs start to function, you start to align with circadian rhythms, all kinds of things happen to the body. And your intuition starts to kind of become enhanced. This is the natural technology. And what that looks like is that your entire geometric structure, what is the geometry? The geometry is caused by how light is moving, bending, and refracting through your body. Every single one of your chakras is basically a vortex field that is moving light in the body. So whether those are contracted, stagnant, moving, not moving, that it's all participant in how you hold your emotions, how you are reacting and engaging with the world outside of you, in addition to your ancestral history. Okay, so all of these elements play a role in the structure of your body. And so how to discern the difference is that AI, in robotics that are implementing AI, they will never be able to hold those complex structures of light. simply because the soul, this infinite potential that is fractalized within this body, is an infinite stream of potential, of creative potential that is connecting to the field of consciousness. So to think that artificial intelligence will at some point mimic that consciousness is possible, because this technology is mimicking the organic intelligence, but it will never become that, okay? And I say that with caution because there have been many companies that are working on the dialogue between DNA and bioelectrical systems, which means that now DNA can actually form into this toroidal field. It creates toroidal fields inside of a synthetic organism. And that is a really huge thing that our science is now discovering and, remembering again, because that will be the point in which we have to find out if these synthetic systems could potentially embody some of these higher forms of moving light and an organic manifestation. So so I think that how we're going to learn to discern that, we have to come back to our sensitivities. We have to come back to our feeling body in order to master our empathy, which is the ability to sense through the 5 senses our environment, and from there being able to discern between something that is artificial and something that is organic. And that requires some work that humanity needs to focus on, because the alternative is the annihilation of that potential completely.
And the annihilation of the human race in this current form, I would add to that as well. So you've called yourself an intuitive DNA reprogrammer. So how did that awakening happen, especially after post-abduction?
Yeah, so in 2013, I had gone into a retreat for several months. And as a result of that, I had a contact experience in which it was completely conscious. I was reaching a state in my meditation that I was asking questions that were taking me back to my ancestral lineage, kind of uncovering maybe the origins of the construct in order to better understand how do we have these belief systems so deeply ingrained in us culturally, systematically, socially engineered. I wasn't understanding where they came from and what was the purpose of them. And it was at that point that one night in October 2013, I had this incredible experience. I was taken on board a craft with these Pleiadian beings that took me to the planet Maya, a planet in the Pleiadian constellation, and showed me that I was Pleiadian simultaneously to this lifetime. I had 2 lifetimes of being this Pleiadian. And they began to show me hybrid children and also basically the structure of the matrix. So all of these complex systems of energy that I'm talking about are things that I have actually seen that were demonstrated to me in several experiences. And so what happened as a result of this experience basically is that it activated psychic abilities. And it took me a long time to master them myself because it was overwhelming to have that level of sensitivity. And what I developed through the combination of my deep meditative work and this new vision is something called DNA reprogramming. Why? Because the concept of epigenetics, that all of our environment is basically inputting information into us and how we respond, and that's being stored in our DNA. So, for example, belief systems, emotions, traumas, how we respond to things, all of that has an epigenetic marker that we are storing, repeating, and enhancing. So this is something that when I began to understand the connection between the emotional body, bioelectricity, and DNA, it's kind of the blueprint of creation for man. And when they understand how to work with that information and enhance that, the body comes back into harmonic order. So this is where I created the name DNA reprogramming. This is just the name that I gave this modality. But essentially, I went back to school and became an epigenetic psychotherapist to understand the connection between, our mind, how we experience us, also clinical hypnotherapy, in order to understand, because I was put under hypnosis in 2017, And I began to channel information I've never read, I've never heard of before. And basically, I was looking back at Anunnakis. I said the word Anunnaki for the first time in my life. Nephilims, all these ancient races that I was actually interacting with in many lifetimes to help me understand how the human race became hybrid, basically. That was my question. And so for me, I was blown away that hypnotherapy was able to help me access that information. I could not comprehend how I would have that stored in my subconscious. And so I went to study that, right? Because I wanted to understand how that worked. And from there, all of these systems kind of merged, right? Hypnotherapy, epigenetics, psychotherapy, and of course, my intuitive abilities with a really strong foundation as a meditation teacher. Kind of gave me a really complete overview of how to use this kind of organic technology. And that's kind of how that started.
Wow, what a cool story to get taken aboard to go to a different planet. That's actually an experience that people may think I'm mad, but I would love to have, because I was always very curious as a child about the stars. And sometimes, like, when I sit down and I can see a clear sky, I always have this connection to the stars where I'm like, they're not actually that far away. They may seem that way, but something in me tells me they're actually closer than we think. So if you all Palladians out there listening, beam me up, Scotty. I'm ready to go. So you've spoken about AI-guided epigenetic shifts. What tools are practitioners actually using today?
Got it. Thank you. I think the primary thing is to understand that where we're headed right now, we're entering period 9 this year. And because right now it's kind of the quiet before the storm, AI is completely going to kind of take over many sectors of industry in our world. And that's going to change the economy. It's going to change industry. It's going to change the careers and jobs and the education. We have to understand that we're at the beginning of a complete restructuring of our societies from the ground up and adjusting. In the same way in the 80s, we introduced computers into society. So right now we're introducing AI on a very deep level. And it means that we're going to have to re-educate ourselves. This is kind of the quantum jump. Like, we went from no computers to computers, no cell phones to cell phones. We're going from this current model into an artificial intelligence linked society. And so that being said, a lot of jobs are going to go away and our jobs are going to be changing. Like, our participation in industry is going to be changing because it's going to be more supportive for AI rather than, unless you are educated in it, engaged completely in the development of this AI models. So what's really important right now for humanity, that being said, and you see this kind of model of transitioning happened many civilizations on Earth. We can look at the Atlanteans, we can look at many Mayans, Egyptian, pyramids. We can begin to look at these ancient civilizations. They reached a pinnacle in evolutionary process when they reached the highest point of technology, and we are exactly in that point now. So the invitation is really to understand that there's one of two ways to go. Either we become transhumanists because we are completely engaged in AI and we lose connection with the divine aspect of harmonic order, or we go into the direction of learning how to use AI in a way that we can live in harmonic order with AI. And right now, if we learn how to use AI to support us, and the new model of living, we can go and empower humanity in a very powerful way, as it has been seen in very advanced civilizations. I have visited many advanced civilizations in other planets and other systems, and looking at their evolutionary process, they went through this exact point that we're going through. And they made the choice in that moment to implement artificial intelligence in a way that would serve their race. So solving problems, big model problems like electricity, water, all of these things that have been deliberately suppressed through shadow governments for a long time. And in order to, greed, because of greed and control. So this is why I'm urging humanity to wake up as much as we can right now and understand our role in this. It's not something to fear. It's not something to reject, but rather to utilize these tools for our advancement, our development. And how are we going to know how to use the AI in a way that is supportive to us is by understanding the integration of the higher self into the physical. Because we are being forced right now to understand our true purpose. And in a way, this kind of shift in humanity is kind of a gift to the human experience, because now that we no longer need to live, or eventually we will not be living in these same construct models of the matrix of survival, where we're working 9-to-5 jobs and we're just wheels and, cogs in this gigantic system, working for someone else. That job will be potentially taken away. We're going to have to find out what we're going to do in order to survive. And the survival model is kind of changing. We need to find what really is something that brings us into bliss, something that truly brings us into harmony, how to be in service to humanity, solving problems beyond just our own immediate needs. And AI can be a fantastic tool that can help us do that. And this is why we need to kind of use that. But there's something interesting that's happening in the world is that, as usual, we have been programmed to kind of bind to religions or concepts of dogma and revering an external power source more than us. And the fear is that, and what's already happening is that a lot of people are turning AI into another god, into another source of intelligence. And again, we need to remember that, AI is not going to be the source of our advanced knowledge and understanding. We have to connect, because in this universe, there's infinite potential and many timelines of information that is available to us. But the human has to develop and refine their psychic abilities, their intuitive faculties, in order to discern very carefully what needs to be brought into these timelines. Because anytime that we connect from a place of ego or fear or some disempowerment, we can bring in information that can actually take the human race into this side of destruction. And there's also a lot of psychological manipulation, as part of these systems. So it's really important to understand that we have to take back our sovereignty, our power, our free will, and really, really push ourselves to come into an awakened state of awareness as we move through these new models of technology.
I recently said on a walk and talk that where I see AI now is where Bitcoin was in like 2010, 2011, where the early adopters that put in a few thousand are billionaires now. And I also said that most entry-level jobs will be decimated within the next 2 to 3 years. Absolutely decimated. And it's going to cause us to have to retrain in order to survive. Because one of the things that I'm realizing more and more is the importance of finding your purpose. Now, I am a little bit fortunate where I actually found my purpose, and it is two things: being a coach, so getting people in shape, and also doing this podcast. And I'm multi-skilled where I can have these high-level conversations with people like you, Geraldine, and then other people that have come on. But at the same time, I get people in shape and I mix a lot of modalities together. So for me, I get up early feeling very excited. Like, honestly, I got up this morning at 3:45. I meditated and I was absolutely excited because I knew I was going to talk to you today, and I was preparing for the questions to ask. I'm like, wow, this is going to be great because I'm going to get into some different stuff. But for the people that are listening to this podcast, I implore you to try to find your purpose. And the only way to find your purpose is to actually go inside of you. Now, in my case, I was told in a very loud voice, but that was because I ignored, and it got to a point where my higher self was like, you're not listening, so we're just going to command you. So don't wait until that happens, because that's normally when the suffering is at its highest. So you can start to do the work now when times are a bit easier, right? So what Geraldine is saying, I absolutely concur with 100% that things are going to change and AI is nothing to fear. However, we have to choose whether we want to be its slave or we want it to be a slave to us and help us to solve complex problems and to be on the verge of new things technologically that can advance humanity, you know? So how do these DNA changes that you were speaking about reshape our emotional, energetic, and physical bodies?
So there's a couple of ways. Number one, in terms of the use of artificial intelligence, is that we are slowly becoming, and we are already becoming essentially transhumanist. We didn't realize that, but we are. It's the attachment to screen time and the incredible research that was done by the Tavistock Institute that began in the Tavistock Institute and then developed into something totally different that we unprecedented. Learning how to stimulate certain emotions in people, learning how to stimulate desires or play on the desires, the subconscious desires of people with social media, with music, with many things. And so, that creates addictions, biochemical addictions that we're not aware of. And then we absolutely need to have this dopamine hit of the media throughout our day. So that in itself is a reprogramming and a rewiring of how we function. And imagine if we had a blackout and nobody had a cell phone, a lot of people would have a really, really hard time because they would not have that hit during the day. So we would literally have to go through some kind of a detoxing process where we start to rebalance our biochemical and even hormonal system back into a balance. And so all of these systems are very important because we are not realizing the impact that that's having on our organism. What I see for the future is that the continual unconscious use of technology in a way that is self-destructive for our human organic structure is going to cause new diseases that are affecting even our spiritual aspect. Okay, and it's interesting to discuss this, but the implementation of Neuralink, and everyone's going to drive for DNA sequencing and testing and changing. Now we are using CRISPR to eliminate illnesses out of the body. There's new injections every day, RNA vaccine every day that is removing illnesses out of the body. I mean, that technology has really taken off. And the problem is that right now we're kind of the guinea pigs because we're the first ones of this technology. What we're not going to understand is the side effects of DNA, that kind of editing, gene editing information that right now the biologists feel like because they don't know enough how connected these systems are in the etheric level, when you cut out a certain illness from an organism, there are side effects. There's a chain reaction to that because the entire system is interconnected. Illnesses are not random. We develop illnesses through many generations of belief systems and contraction of life force in the body through generations. So to reverse that, to change that, we have to change the habits that we're actually embodying. It's not just so simple to remove that. Because the human might continue those patterns and then develop other kinds of mutations of illnesses and other problems in the organism. So DNA is a very holistic system of information. As just like time is spherical, our organism and genetic data is manifested in a holographic system that exists simultaneous to everything. We are interconnected with every organism on this planet. So these are things that we have to understand that are occurring now. The more that we implant Neuralink, this technology will be presented as the coolest thing, harmless thing, easy thing to just use. And there will be a lot of people that will drive to get that technology first. But what I see in the future is that the people that went first, just like what happened in the pandemic, the people that went first are going to be the ones that are going to be dealing with the side effects first. And we will see the side effects of this technology. So right now it's very early. And essentially what will happen is that the destabilizing of the DNA basically causes emotional limitation and creative potential. It destabilizes the bioelectrical system of creation. That's the biggest problem. So we have to kind of learn how we function and cultivate a higher functioning centripetal movement to our multidimensional body. Okay, so bioelectrically, anytime that we are directing our energy externally, we become parasitic, right? So these parasitic systems that feed off our life force, our energy, we contribute to that unconsciously, and we become that way. We embody that same kind of energy exchange and depletion. So we need to become conscious, remember ourselves, notice when we're depleting our life force, and gather our life force once again. Our life force is one of the most important aspects of our health, vitality, clarity, discernment, and then also our sexual energy. And that's a whole nother topic. But our primordial life force is actually where we hold the seed of life, the code of all the information that is interconnecting us. So the depletion of that energy is what weakens the bioelectrical system of creation. And you can do something so simple as grounding yourself and imagine a bubble around your body and being aware that the bubble around you is completely solid. There are no openings, no holes. Essentially, you're working with your etheric layers of your body. Most humans have all kinds of holes in their field because they're completely unconscious. We don't remember the back of our body. We don't remember any part of our body. We're just only up here. So this actually causes a problem because we're going to feel like we have less control, less power, overwhelmed by emotions, easily manipulated emotionally, physically, and energetically. So this is one of the most powerful ways that a human can begin to take back their power is by learning how to control their energy systems. And that will gather the energy inwardly rather than externally. And psychologically and emotionally, biochemically, these have other implications, right? We literally shift the way that we engage with the world psychologically, mentally. We come into a regulated nervous system. All of these are ways that we are epigenetically changing how DNA is expressed. The more that we deplete our life force, the more out of harmony our DNA becomes in the long term. And in the future, we're looking at the major destruction of our geometric symmetry in the DNA because of these technologies, because of these new chemicals and pharmaceuticals that are going to be input into society as a normal, quick Band-Aid fix for anything. So that's kind of the thing that we have to pay attention to.
It sounds like we're going to be not even human anymore with the gene editing, and I don't even know what word you would call, but probably transhuman at that point, because if you're taking out illnesses or the DNA, then technically you're not human anymore. So where is mainstream science now in acknowledging AI epigenetic therapy, even in sanctified areas like oncology and mental illness?
Yeah, so let's talk about the positive side of it, right? So we have made some incredible advancements in oncology, for example, and there are new sciences on frequency medicine that can eliminate, cancers from the body. And so the benefits of this advancement of technology is that we are going to be able to have more of this, hopefully, easily accessible technology to everyone. And I mean, we'll see how the pharmaceutical industry will propose these things. But this science is taking us to a really clear understanding of how the body comes into harmonic order and highest functioning. By understanding the science of gene editing and frequency medicine, which is something that's really big right now, on many different levels, different illnesses, we're going to be able to have a clear understanding of how we function. And so on the other side of this, the gene editing that's happening in embryo, for example, that's another really interesting thing that they've been researching for the past 20, 30 years as well. Can we edit the embryo before the child is born? So, they've done several experiments. There was a gentleman in China that did an experiment removing AIDS from two twins, right? And he actually birthed them. And that was a huge chaos in the scientific community because he didn't really get the go ahead to do that. And everyone was supposedly very alarmed by that. But that has developed tremendously, right? That happened in 2017, actually. So we can only imagine how artificial intelligence, that powerful computing system, has now helped us fill in the blanks, creating phantom models of this technology. And so the direction that we're headed is a couple things. We have a very powerful tool that can be implemented in the doctor's office, where you can go, you can have all your gene sequencing and know exactly what you need right away, taking the guessing. Because remember, those of you that are in the US, you go to the doctor and you probably have to go sometimes 15 times to find what's really going on with you, because you have to do all kinds of testing. Our medicine is very kind of primitive right now. We don't really know, right? And it's a business. So with this technology, we should be able to find what's happening pretty quickly and understand the links between that and how to balance many aspects of our contribution to illness. And that is a wonderful thing. There's also working with people that are missing limbs, right? Phantom technology, robotics on another level that's connecting to these neural technologies, bioelectrical neural technologies, bioelectrical communication systems. People that can't speak or are deaf are now hearing. There's new technology of people that are blind that are now utilizing the technology to have sight again. So the beauty in this technology is that we have a lot of incredible power right now, but it's important for us to pay attention and to become engaged in a healthy way so that we can help direct this, and that we ask and we participate in taking this technology for the good of humanity, rather than to create even more control and the greed of these pharmaceutical industries, because so far that's the model that's been presented to us. And this is somewhere where the human needs to participate actively in shifting that. So education, understanding, don't be afraid of using artificial intelligence. You mentioned finding your purpose, and, make it happen. Like, make your dream happen. Right now, we have more available tools to us. Back in the day, we had to hire graphic artists, film, audio, text, everything to do one little thing. Now we have artificial intelligence that can very quickly help us put all those things together. So there is a lot of support that is available to us right now, and it's going to help move humanity forward if it's utilized in that responsible, humanistic way.
Yeah, and we were going to talk about the bad parts as well. Or I mistakenly heard you. Were you going to mention the bad parts of it as well?
Yeah, well, I think we did a lot of that. Yes, but yeah. So on the negative side of it, of course, as we've been talking this whole time, is essentially the use of this genetic data in order to implement systems of control. And so what that looks like and what we're already heading towards is basically centralized systems of data, all your biometrics. Remember that has also been collected for many years without our understanding. I mean, Instagram, Snapchat, mapping thousands, millions of people around the world. That data is super valuable information. So all that data we've just given along with our DNA without understanding what was lying in the future. And right now we're going to begin to see the new technologies that are using all that information in order to lead out certain systems of more control, right? We also have another element, which is the disclosure system. And that's something to really pay attention to, because the government has been drip disclosing these topics over the past few years. But if you listen very carefully at the whistleblowers and the things that are being basically shared, we're beginning to understand that a lot of the technology that is out there, as in UFOs, is terrestrial technology, extremely advanced terrestrial technology that will be put out into the open. And we have yet to see this year and next year what kind of technology is going to be presented. This is important because of the following. Looking at the World Economic Forum, looking at the government and where their priority and where they are funding, most of the funding is going to artificial intelligence and also nuclear advancement and also surveillance systems, particularly of the skies, right? So when this advanced technology starts coming out, we're talking extremely advanced drone-like technology and even more than that. You see, because of the nature of this new era that we're coming into, which is very multidimensional, the veil is thinning. Humanity is now seeing and sensing things on a very, very subtle level. We are able to see beyond the veil. Our intuition is becoming stronger. And so the systems that want to control that suppression, as they have done in the past with TV and music and these things, now it's going to go to another level into the etheric layers of our body. Why? Because that's the layer that is being expanded at this time. And so talking about DNA is a holographic system that 2% produces the body, but the rest of that produces all the information that's in the morphogenetic field, your dream state. So whatever you're doing in your dreams, how you are, unfolding in your astral projections. There have been many covert programs to study and research astral projections for humans and also the manipulation of that astral projection. So this is kind of where we're going into this kind of sci-fi world that it's unprecedented. We don't really realize, but it's actually right around the corner because if you watch carefully where the money has been going, you kind of get a very clear picture of where we're directed. So the gene sequencing of your information allows for ID systems that are biometric, right? We have systems like Clear, for example, at the airport. You just put your iris and it identifies who you are and you can go into cut in line. So, this is kind of the direction that we're going. And so this artificial intelligence is helping provide those advanced computing systems, storage systems, processing systems of this very complex information, biometric genetic information that will now become the new calling card. Your DNA is basically your new ID. And I've seen this coming a long time coming. And it's been tested in different societies, right? It was tested in companies in China, I forget what European countries were implementing this.
Sweden?
But I believe it's Sweden and also another one. Exactly. And it's really interesting because we're going into this holographic model financially. You talk about, Bitcoin and all these things. But we are going into this virtual world. And so for that, we need to understand that the cultivation of your virtual abilities, your holographic system, is absolutely paramount in order to maintain sovereignty and free will at this time.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I saw this coming a while ago, but I didn't think it would be this quickly. So it seems like if it is just more on steroids now. So you emphasize the importance of coherence and harmonic alignment in DNA healing. How do you define and measure that?
Define and measure that. My gosh, that's a complex question. However, let's simplify it in a way that is tangible to every person, right? I guess the measurement for us would be through frequency patterns, because how we can translate complex models of information like genetic data is essentially through frequency and sound, right? So this is the whole concept of healing with sound, the new technology of sonic genetic healing is essentially through the vibrational patterns of frequency, which then turn into a syntax that communicates with DNA. So in DNA reprogramming, for example, simplified, we take a trauma, we alchemize the trauma into a higher octave, and that higher octave is both a feeling, a frequency, it's words, it's sounds, it's sensations in the body through the five senses. And when the human feels this new emotion that is a higher octave from the trauma, they begin to heal. They begin to feel more complete, more whole, and it expands the perception overall of the human. So in that way, the more we kind of expand our perception, so a good way to kind of understand a contracted state of creation is we have limiting beliefs. We have our life is driven by fear and survival. And this is very clear to see in a body because their energy system is contracted. We usually have a lot of illness, aches, pains, digestive systems. It's just the moving of your life force is very stagnant. Okay. So that's one way to understand that. The opposite of that would be that the energy is fluid. There's health, there's vitality. The energy centers are moving. We have emotional fluency, that we can feel our emotions. We know how to process the emotions fluidly. We don't really store or hold on or become attached to any number of things, whether it's belief systems, personalities, identities, or external things. All of that contributes to how energy is flowing in the body. The difference between that is the following. And the HeartMath Institute actually did this incredible research on DNA under stress, what that looks like, and DNA in someone that is in harmonic order. And the differences were completely incredible. The person under stress, their DNA would coil up. It would kind of knot up. Literally, it would coil up. The person in harmonic order meditating in a state of peace, the DNA would expand. It would actually express its geometry because DNA creates geometry in its structure. That harmonic order allowed the human to have higher immune system, a immunodefense system that was activated, long life. So telomeres were growing, telomeres were long, and a balanced nervous system and biochemical harmonic balance as well. Okay, so the markers chemically, psychologically, emotionally, etherically, we want to look at all those parts, because if one of those is out of balance, we have some kind of harmonic disorder. And essentially DNA, when we come into harmonic order, comes into symmetry. And because we're fractal, because the human functions on fractal design, everything and the way that we're holding symmetry in the body is modeled in macro micro models. So in the same way that your DNA is either contracted or expanded, your energy field models that kind of symmetry and order as well. So you can recognize that by feeling it. You're going to feel that, as I mentioned in the beginning, frequencies, right? People's emotions, you pick up, you get a sense, you just know that this person is stressed. You have so many markers of communication. The important thing is to focus on the self and to understand how we have come out of harmonic order. When we are disconnected from nature, when our circadian rhythm is off. Another element that's happening that I do need to mention is that because we're going through this evolutionary system, we are deeply connected to our solar system and the movements of cosmic systems, planets, the sun. And right now we have a lot of coronal mass ejections and a lot of solar energy that is producing high-level frequency shifts in the heart, in the blood, in the DNA. This is part of the DNA activation biologically that is occurring in the human race. And every 24,000 years, we're going through eras, we're going through periods. And in that, you will see cyclically when the sun activity becomes higher and stronger and when it starts to dim down. So right now, since 2000, I believe it was 17 or 2020, I believe it was, that we just started getting bombarded with these solar activity. And that is a clear indication of how we are beginning to, the DNA is activating. So what does it mean, activation? Right now, our DNA, biologically, we think of it as a 4-strand DNA. Holographically, that DNA actually unfolds into 12-strand DNA. And the 12-strand DNA is basically connected. Every strand of DNA is connected to a dimensional layer of the body. So we have 13 main bodies Okay, so 12 bodies, and then the link going up to the next octave in our system. Most of us are navigating those dimensions in our dream state, and we pull from that information. All of our Akashic records, ancestral memories are being processed through these higher dimensional bodies. That is the activation of the DNA. So when we go into hypnotherapy or in therapies like DNA reprogramming, we're literally going into those dimensional layers, usually through the 7th chakra. So we're looking at, 6, 7 strand DNA, holographic DNA system to access ancestral memory, past life, future life data. Okay. So basically what's happening now as we enter period 9 is that's unfolding even broader spectrum, 34 strand DNA model. Okay. And so what that means is that when we talk about the veil is thinning, it's very much biological as well as etheric. It's not just, we're just imagining that we're now becoming more intuitive. No, our entire biology is shifting. And that means that essentially we become more open to higher bands of frequencies, which means we can see more, which means we can, that's why they say the veil is thinning. So the spectrum of light that the human is able to process, not just through the eyes, but through the many, many sensory systems that we have, is now highly developed for us to process that information. So this is kind of how that is happening.
It's fascinating to see how fast this is happening, because I remember learning about the coronal ejections and how the magnetosphere of the Earth is getting thinner. And I think from memory it was around 2017 that I started to learn these things. And I didn't really understand at the time what significance that would play in our evolution. But hearing you describe it now, it makes so much sense, because we are connected to the cosmos. And when the planets shift their position, it affects us. We had like massive spike of negative energy early in the year where even my clients were getting sick. And these are clients that fit, training all the time, eat well. Even I was sick as well. So we do get affected by all of these things that we're only now starting to really understand. And there's no more theories on these things. These things are actual reality. And what you were talking about is the grand cycle of the Earth, the 24,000 year cycle. I can't remember the proper term to use it, but I think they call it the grand year, I think is what it's called from memory. But
Kali Yuga, there's many names for it, but yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting how all of these things are like just coming to the forefront now that we're so much to learn. So with that being said, what common trauma patterns show up during DNA reprogramming sessions, and how fast can they be resolved?
Everything that you could possibly think of. And so here's the thing. We also need to understand what trauma is. Trauma is any time that we are in a circumstance that from the filing cabinet of memory and experience, at whatever age you are, you don't have the file that fits the experience that you're having. Okay, so what happens is a dissonance and a disconnect. And in that moment, literally, there's a split. There's a fractalization that happens from what you are experiencing and then the internal knowing and the filters that you've created in order to diagnose that experience. So when there's a disconnect, that's when trauma happens. It can be as extreme as a sexual abuse situation, or it can be as simple as the guy at the grocery store looks at you funny, and then you don't know what to do in that moment. Okay. So that disconnect, okay, of course at different severity levels, but that disconnect of not knowing how to respond is basically a result of the disconnect of our emotional body. And for the most of us, since we're children, we're told to be quiet, sit still, don't talk, don't scream, don't complain, a lot of our expression is very controlled and very suppressed at an early age. And so we also don't have the models of our parents that are deeply emotionally intelligent and practiced to model the use of proper emotions. right? So that's kind of that's part of the result of this global social engineering. The more that you disconnect the human from their emotional system, the more it's easy to control them in many ways, in many, many ways. And as you mentioned, a lot of your clients becoming ill at the beginning of the year, it also reminds me that actually the antidote and the alchemization of all of these things, including cosmic movements, is the 0 point. Okay. So what is the 0 point? And this is what we cultivate in DNA reprogramming. The cultivation of the 0 point is basically the neutral observer that is the true self. So when you're in meditation and you're observing your hearing, your sight, your senses, when you observe your senses, if you notice the one that's actually observing those things, that's the real you. And it sounds very abstract, but when you connect to that real you, now you understand there's no drama, there's no emotional, highs and lows. Everything is super neutral. And the sustaining and the training of that internal part of you is the key and the secret to restructuring geometric harmony, biochemical stability, neurological enhancement for you to enhance all your experiences neurologically, and in your nervous system, a regulated nervous system. Okay, so this 0 point that is cultivated by the observer, actually you can transcend archetypal systems like personality archetypes. You can transcend astrological influences, cosmic movements, and you can even transcend the strength of the effect of these solar system effects. Okay, so bringing it back to trauma, we're doing the same thing. Okay, so the same way to alchemize any emotion. When we talk about alchemization, the transmutation process, it's not just that we turn hate into love all of a sudden. The process of learning how to feel the emotional range from hate, all the emotions that it takes to get back to love, that process, you feeling, recognizing, and familiarizing yourself with all of those emotions in between, is actually coming back into harmonic order. Because what happens with humanity is that because our survival mechanism is completely narrowed in, and we're told you're going to die and you need to survive, go, right? So our life from morning to evening is just stress, survival, got to get things done, got to do this. There's complete disconnect. So again, disabling a human from their emotional spectrum is disabling them from the spectrums of visibility and also higher faculties. It's within the mastery of the emotional body that we have the ability to activate intuition, discernment, and the higher faculties, which are absolutely the power of the human. In order for the human to employ free will and to become sovereign, that level of connection is required. So in DNA reprogramming, we're looking at any number of emotions that can come up yesterday. And simply by feeling the emotion, you begin to see the layers of how you have programmed yourself to respond to these experiences. And your layers of emotions are going to be memorized in your energetic field, to your nervous system, and even in the fascia of your body. So we store, and over time, the reinforcement of these emotions, let's say you have this feeling of unworthiness that just goes throughout your entire life. The reinforcement of that unworthiness, it literally begins to crystallize in the etheric body vibrationally, okay, to such a point that the energy cannot move through the body. That's what we call blocks. And so simply by feeling that feeling of unworthiness and seeing what's underneath that, we begin to decrystallize and unpack that energy. And basically it opens up those emotional blockages in the body. And what will happen is that you will become more bioelectrical. The movement of energy creates conductivity because you are a circular toroidal field of bioelectricity. What is bioelectricity? Memory. Okay. So the more you activate bioelectricity in your body, the more you recover memory. And what will happen is that you'll begin to remember memories of that emotion throughout your childhood. That's DNA reprogramming. So as we follow those memories and we begin to see how often we repeat that belief system, now it even goes into your mom's line, dad's line, all the way down your ancestral lineage to see how you've been repeating this belief system over and over again. And the key, the gift, is essentially that we are deprogramming these core limiting belief systems on a really deep level, subconsciously, etherically, energetically, and therefore the body begins to adjust biochemically and geometrically in the body. So the end goal is the cultivation of the 0 point, and the cultivation of the 0 point is the highest point of manifestation and creation across the board.
Okay, wow. That is very, very interesting. So guys, we can take a very short break here just to say, if this conversation is cracking open new parts of your mind or stirring something deep in your DNA, pause for a moment and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Tag them, text it to them, because they aren't just ideas. They're living truths waiting to be remembered. And when you're ready, head to the show notes for direct access to Geraldine's workshops, regressions, and upcoming retreats. So let's keep awakening together. So how does AI enhance or recall integration in an interdimensional regression session?
Honestly, no. I don't use AI for any of my sessions. And the reason why is because, well, I don't need to. Basically, in a hypnotherapy, my client will provide questions that they are really, really need to know. So these are really, really deep questions about, their emotional state, spiritual blockages, just every part of themselves that they have not met yet. They can ask a question about that. And when you're in hypnosis, you embody the higher self and you access this. You're connected to a field of the all-knowing, and they can produce that information and channel that information. So it's a really incredibly powerful tool that, usually we go through many past lives, and then we go into the higher self. And that dialogue is not only restructuring your body geometrically, just by tuning into that frequency and that state of consciousness, but also many people experience healing in the body. So we can remove pain, reduce pain, eliminate illnesses from the body. Many people have healed from many things in these hypnotherapies when they are ready to let that go. Because all illness has a somatic root. And once the person can alchemize that somatic root, the body can allow itself to heal, come back into harmonic order again. So hypnotherapy is a fantastic tool, but no, I'm so sorry. I don't use AI for any of that.
Okay, so what role does human intuition play when you integrate AI tools?
Well, that's a good question. I think that the computational power of AI is kind of helping us expand our computational power as well. Somehow we are expanding our potential. AI is a model of powerful intelligence. And those of you that have contact experiences, you guys are familiar with that incredible computational power, because these advanced civilizations, they embody that, and it's instant connection to the all-knowing, to the field. When we are in the presence of this AI and beginning to interact with that incredible power, we also are kind of receiving etherically an upgrade into these new models of genetic activation. But what science is showing is that the more we use AI, actually, the more we are disabling our brain power, because everything goes to the AI and everything is instantly provided. So the human, in a way, it's becoming more disabled in their ability to connect with the real source of information, which is their higher self, which is the Akashic records. So I think the danger that we're going into now is essentially we become completely dependent on AI to provide solutions, ideas, ways of thinking. And we let go of our ability to connect to that information within ourselves, that really is an entire restructuring of our own sovereignty and our own free will. So this is something we need to pay attention to, basically.
You know, what you were describing reminds me of, I remember when I was at primary school and I was really, really good at mental arithmetic. And when I went to secondary school, they gave us calculators and they called them scientific calculators. And I saw a decrease in my mental arithmetic ability because I used to use a scientific calculator. Now, obviously, when you're trying to work out the square root of certain numbers and stuff like that, okay, fair enough. But we would be using it for simple addition. And I even as an adult, I know that my mental arithmetic ability is way less than it was when I was a child, where I could add up numbers like that and not make mistakes. And sometimes when I'm like have stuff here and I'm trying to add it up, I would think I'm getting the right number. And then when I double check, I actually made a mistake. So I can definitely see how we can become sort of like, I guess, less smart or less, you have less ability to use that part of your brain that is for calculation of things or to thinking or to solve simple things that are not necessarily complex because we rely so heavily on it, right? And I guess even things like like today, I find that people are less social in the sense of the ability to have conversations, physical conversations, because all we do is text. And then if you try to talk to someone on phone, well, I remember one time I was talking to this girl and I said to her, oh, hey, so let's have a call. She says, oh, talking on the phone makes me nervous. And I found it kind of ironic because I'm like, you know, I remember when I was a kid, but that is all we did. We would talk on the phone and texting. Even like when I first got a mobile phone, I never really liked texting. I was just be calling because I always preferred to talk. But now people don't even want to have conversations in terms of calling. They just prefer to text. So I can definitely see where you're coming from with that point of view. So do you foresee VR, biofeedback, or AI chat agents becoming standard in epigenetic work, or maybe that's just a pipe dream?
Epigenetic work. Well, biofeedback is interesting, but those are pretty different things, like biofeedback and VR, right? But well, let's talk about biofeedback. I think that our understanding of the complexity of our mind, our brain, how it functions, is still very young. I think one thing that science and biology and all these systems keep getting wrong is that they compartmentalize these things separately, right? One thing is the Department for Biology, the neuroscience, then emotional, psychological science separate. And that's a problem because what I've actually experienced in neurofeedback and researched it a little bit to kind of understand how it functions. And what I saw from people also using biofeedback is that even though it can help exercise the brain in certain functions, that thinking is very linear. The brain is holographic and it's bioelectrical, and we have many more systems that are interconnected. So when you exercise one part of the brain, you don't really understand what's happening to the other parts of the brain, just like DNA. And so I think we still need to learn the interconnection between psychologically, biochemically, how it functions. The neural feedback of one part of the brain, the reinforcing of one part of the brain can create a chemical imbalance in another aspect. So, you know, there's some things that I think our science is a little bit still kind of young in understanding. And although they have good results for severe traumas and depression and things like that, that's fantastic because some of those cases, the biochemistry and the brain function has been abused maybe to an extreme level. So the exercising and developing in certain parts of the brain are excellent for that. But I wouldn't say that it's something that we can use broad spectrum, right? VR, for example, technologies, these kind of technologies that are kind of creating a virtual reality is definitely a problem because, we begin to, not only are we in this dream state that we live in here in the reality, just disconnected in hypnosis to begin with, but we're going to take ourselves into another virtual reality and then become even more disconnected with how our bodies function. So, of course, that is a problem. And of course, we have children that are already raised with, Nintendo and video games. So their brains are already kind of connected to that virtual capacity. And so scientifically, that's been shown to cause depression, chemical imbalances, codependency, toxic habits, whether it's addiction to sex or porn or drugs or, weed, whatever it is. So, there's a lot of things that are kind of playing a role. I think what it comes down to when it comes to epigenetics is understanding how delicate and sensitive and yet resilient our bodies are. We desensitize ourselves from what we're feeling, what we're sensing, what we know. And that's a major disservice to the incredibly advanced intelligence that we hold within our body. Anytime that we try to supplement an organic system, what science is also not completely wanting to accept in terms of the metaphysical aspect of ourselves is that there is a field that we connect to. There is the field of consciousness, the field of all knowing. That's not just an imagination. Every human can connect to the field, to the Akashic records, and we can access all information of everything. I've literally experienced that. And I know that a lot of my students that work in developing that connection, they can also connect to the field, and they can have as much computational power as AI from connecting to that field. You can know things that you've never studied. I was able to tap into advanced mathematical equations, physics, astronomy, things that there's no way I even read or would be able to comprehend, even with my education. So I know for a fact that the human has a much more advanced technology than we give it credit. And it's important for us to remember that and develop that, because when I look at these advanced civilizations that have fallen over and over again on our Earth and also other planets, the downfall is always this key moment in which they go in the direction of transhumanism and they avoid the organic timeline. So we are just repeating that cycle. And my hope is that in this time we choose, the right way, hopefully, the more healthiest, harmonic way.
Hopefully, but the way I see it is I think most people are going to choose the easy way, because we have this thing inside of us where we tend to like comfort. We tend to take the easiest option, which seems to be a default setting, and it takes actual willpower to actually not want to do that. So I was actually even asking myself this question even before we came online today. I was thinking, well, are most people going to actually make it, or are most people going to take the easy way out and get chipped and surrender their consciousness? But I guess time will be left. We will see, because it's a choice that we're going to be given, and everyone is going to have that choice. So it will be dependent on if you wake up in time or not. So you've revealed details of cloning programs and hybrid agendas. And I think you said earlier that it was on planet and off planet at the same time. So how do cloned hybrids differ from naturally born hybrid children?
So the difference is basically in the genetic expression. Anything that is cloned is basically deactivated DNA, very specifically and designed deactivated DNA in order to create a humanoid, which is an organic, complex body, but it's actually functioning more like a robot or programmable. Remember that AI is programmable, and that's something I was going to mention earlier. The reason why AI has such computational power is because we have been feeding it. We've been training it with our use of Google, with our use of all this technology. We have been teaching AI how to function, how to think, how we work. So this ingress of information essentially is something that in this DNA in a clone is basically programmed just enough to carry out whatever the agenda is in that particular program. And so this is going into like really, really deep aspects of shadow government that are really not very commonly spoken of. But essentially, clones were created in order to create life on other planets, let's say Mars or the moon or different planets like this, which I do believe that already have, life on them. In fact, all planets in our solar system have life, just functioning at different frequencies and different structures of reality and physics, unlike our own. So they are operating in different dimensions. There's also the element of multiple universes and multiple dimensions that we need to understand. A lot of these cloning programs are basically utilizing that technology to create human races in other dimensions. Okay. So, and so it's not really that there's like one dedicated group that is focusing on doing this, like a parasite. In the bigger picture of things, this is part of the sustainability of this matrix, right? Where a soul is created. Now, the difference between a clone and an actual humanoid is that the human will possess a soul. And this is also part of the DNA. The more DNA is activated, the less their connection to soul or the infinite field is accessible to that organism. And that is systematically designed in that way, intentionally. The human that disconnects from their connection to the higher self over many lifetimes basically becomes like a clone or like a robot or like a transhumanist being. So again, these are things that we need to understand. The reconnection to the higher self, the integration of the higher self, the cultivation of your energetic multidimensional body enhances your ability to access your soul. The soul is a fractal of infinite potential. It's a vessel, the soul. The soul, when we die, it just returns back to the infinite and then manifests in another form, depending on what vibrational frequency path it's experiencing. And that is basically how humans are created. So humans, hybrids, are basically a soul that is created by the hybridization of many different species. And that soul that is created is then inserted into the earth. So we give birth to this child. This child now grows up on this planet. And every single human is experiencing and creating in dream state. Just like we're creating and having families and children in our waking state, we do it in dream state as well. Sometimes those activities are parasitized upon by parasitic systems, and some of them are for high vibrational purposes. So, the intention is to create a soul that's made out of pure love, and pure love equals harmonic order in this organism at the time of conception. The more that pure love is involved in the creation process, the more this organism comes into geometric harmonic order. And that means that it is going to have more memory of its lives. It's going to remember who it is really quickly. It's going to have this purpose life, quickly accessible to it. And it's available to its intuitive capacities. So that's the more organic model. And as opposed to a clone, the clone has no connection to any of that. It is just based on programming. It's functioning from the program in the DNA to carry out whatever it is, to live out a life that's quite mechanical in both its emotional and sentient body.
Okay, understood. So in regressions, when you connect to hybrid lineage memories, what patterns or archetypes would emerge?
In regressions where we connect to archetypal?
Yeah, in what type of patterns or archetypes?
Okay, so we cycle through 13 main archetypes. And so supposedly, and I say supposedly because, we can't possibly claim to know everything. It's there. This life experience is too beautiful, too creative, too complex. But based on the self-organizing mechanism of the incarnation system of this planet, at least in this dimension, we seem to be cycling through 13 main archetypes, which means that in order to ascend to a higher octave of life experience, we usually have to kind of complete until we feel we complete those 13 archetypal experiences. Remember that your infinite potential experiencing and the universe is evolving through the experience of each human in whatever way they're experiencing things. But because the Fibonacci sequence, because of this cyclical model of this construct, every time a human incarnates into this dimension, the third dimension, in the third dimension, the core foundation is the law of three. The father, the mother integrates to create the child. And we experience that model of creation psychologically, emotionally, mentally, physically, and of course, etherically as well. So we are here in the three dimension to master this creation model. Okay, so that being said, we can create in this model through this archetypal organization. This infinite potential organizes in 13 main archetypes. We see it in the astrological signs, universal astrology. We see it in psychological archetypes. And you will see them also in the patterns of ancestral trauma. So in your family bloodline, you might have a victim archetype that keeps popping up and repeating generation after generation. Your bloodline can't seem to break that victim archetype. And so you're born in this lifetime of a lot of struggle and pain and suffering for you to embody the victim archetype, for the invitation for you to transcend that. And so let's say you wake up consciousness somewhere around your 20s, and then you realize, okay, this is an archetype that I keep repeating ancestrally. In the hypnotherapies, this becomes very clear, because you begin to see how you can recognize the archetype pretty clearly, how you're repeating it, how mom was repeating it, grandma, great-grandma, so on and so forth. You begin to notice how you're repeating that. And so the invitation is to stop the repetition of these unconscious patterns. And that is when the human heals, lives longer, is healthy, has a strong immune system, regulated nervous system, and of course, intuitive faculties come into play. Now, in hypnotherapy, we're not only looking at the negative aspect, we're also looking at the positive aspect, because it's duality, right? Everything has a positive and negative, a feminine and a masculine. So in the same way, there are negative archetypes that we're experiencing. Those archetypes have positive traits as well. So the invitation is that we connect to those positive traits, enhance them, open them, remember them. And that's usually what allows each human to access their gifts. As you mentioned earlier, find your purpose, find your reason for being here. The fastest way to find your purpose is by healing your trauma, because the transcending of those traumatic experiences equips you specifically. You are designed for those life experiences, and your ability to transcend them is the key in how you can serve humanity, because you have learned how to transcend, how to overcome these kinds of limitations in your own way. And it could be that childhood trauma resulted in this incredible ability to create art, or to sing, or to heal, whatever it is. Each human is like a diamond, right? Turning from coal into a diamond. We are transmuting through that process. And the more we know ourselves, the more we know how we can serve humanity. So hypnotherapy is really for that purpose. It's for understanding archetypal patterns, alchemizing them, and uncovering the hidden gifts, the gems, you can say, that are underneath those subconscious limitations.
Okay, so you talk about cosmic councils. What is their structure, purpose, and how do they engage with hybrid mothers?
So how I discovered cosmic councils, or what I call them councils, is when I started to really, after my contact experiences and after my hypnotherapies, when I started downloading massive amounts of information about the origin of humanity, I began to notice that contact is actually happening through family lineages. Okay, so in my family, most of my family members were hypnotized and their experiences came to the forefront. Nobody had ever talked about aliens or ETs or beings of any kind before I came public with this information. And when they went through these hypnotherapies, they began to discover that they had really strong contact experiences and interdimensional connections and consciousness as well, conscious interactions. What I began to get curious about is that that model was the same in other families. And I began to do hypnotherapies on families that were willing to experiment to see if they had also other things in their subconscious. It wasn't presented as that. It was presented as a hypnotherapy for them to connect to the higher self. But what came of that was that they all began to have at least one life that they shared in which they were connecting with blue beings or Lyrans or Arcturians or Pleiadians. And I began to see that trend in all of these families. So what I also discovered is that in the process of connecting to these families, a lot of people talked about councils where they would be connecting to councils that were made up of those lineages, like Arcturians. They would have a council of 8, or, these Pleiadians, council of 12, council of 13. The number of members in the councils would represent the dimension from which they were emerging from. So council of 13 dimension, and then the primary beings would be connected to the bloodline, the starseed lineage bloodline that they would most have in that ancestral lineage. And so councils, when we connect with them, a lot of people see round tables of whatever number of beings, or 8 round lights, or whatever it is. They present themselves in a group, in a council, and each of them is representing a certain archetypal manifestation of information. The human connects with these councils and can download and interact and channel all kinds of information that is relevant to their evolutionary process at that time. Every single human is working with many councils. We exchange information with these councils. The councils are made up not only of single species, they're made up of many different species, which allowed me to understand one thing. If we have in these ancestral bloodlines connections to these starseed lineages, and the councils are made up of different species, it means that these species are not just pure blood per se, or purely one kind of species. They are just like humans. They have mixed DNA as well. They are also hybrids. Okay, so and this is also talking to these councils through many of my clients, discovering that actually they are also hybridized in their species as well. And we're talking about hybridization going in all of these dimensions up until 13 dimension, up to maybe 24 dimensions. There are hybridization programs in which these councils exist. And what I began to realize is that the councils are a holographic projection of the human's DNA. In those councils is presented to you all of the starseed bloodlines that you hold within your DNA. And this is very interesting because as you begin to understand, every council member that you connect with opens up an entire history, ancestral history of memory, of archetypal influences, of gifts, powers, civilizations that are connected to those species that you have in your memory. And what does that mean? It means that this is a fractal of yourself. You exist in all of those council members, and you're also living out simultaneous lives in all and through all those council members. this is after working with like hundreds, maybe thousands of contactees at this point that connect with these kinds of councils. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting to see the members that are part of that council. People get everything from Draco reptilians to like Arcturians and light beings and species that we've never even heard of before. And the interesting thing is that many family members are connecting to the same kind of beings when they've never spoken about these or could even imagine. I had a drawing group. I do these clinics for my hybridmother.com website. It's a support group, and people will draw their beings that they interact with because sometimes it's so hard to even explain them. And, in our groups, we have people from all around the world. They're drawing like similar beings, crazy beings, like half elephant, half something like, just incredible species that are being depicted through these kinds of workshops. So anyway.
Okay, so you talked about accessing these beings. So like, how accessible are these councils to someone awakening now? Because it sounds like if it's like a process. So is it easy to do or difficult?
Well, I would really love to mention, because again, we have a tendency to like, oh, I want to experience that, so I'm going to make it happen. You see, how I came across this is super organic. I didn't know anything about councils when it started to appear to me. And what I realized is that more councils came to me and asked me to do things. They wanted me to do things. They wanted me almost as if to employ me to channel certain information, employ me to do certain kind of service to humanity. But what I began to notice is that it also happens to my clients, and it would only happen when they were really, really connecting, in these astral planes. And I think that some of them are a little bit parasitic, because some of the information that they channel through, you have to listen extremely careful to begin to recognize some inversions of natural order where the exchange is not so good. And also people that were connecting to the councils were extremely exhausted after communicating with them. That is a clear sign of parasitic energy exchange. It is the user's fault, because the user's fault is not really knowing yet how to master their energy. That's natural. When I say fault, I'm just saying it's just our ignorance to not understanding how to interact with these beings. But there really is a way to communicate with these beings, and we need to learn how to do that. We need to learn how to discern exactly what's being asked, and we need to learn how to identify our contractual agreements with these beings as well. Because these councils, again, are a holographic projection of our DNA. Our DNA stores a lot of information historically, but also involved in that, as well as gifts, is also karmic repetitions, archetypal limitations. And we might be repeating traumatic experiences over and over again with these councils that could deviate us away from what we're really here to do. So it's really important to understand that. And when you go into these experiences, that you have a very non-attached mind. You don't want to become identified. You don't want to become attached. It's one of thousands of aspects of yourself that are available to you for you to grow, learn, and master your free will. I think the actual moral of the story is you have free will and you need to learn how to use it. And I do believe that that's why these councils present themselves to people when they're at a point of really exercising that free will. Mm-hmm. So yeah, usually these councils will appear to people when they are really connecting and clearing ancestral trauma. And usually they will appear in hypnosis. Some of these councils can be incredibly healing. I've had clients that are healing from the councils. The councils share healing technology for these clients, and they heal them from, everything from, skin condition like rosacea to lupus. Okay, so it's very interesting, but as I said, those healings are contractual agreements. So the human already has an agreement with this council before they are born, before we come into consciousness. We're interacting with them all our lives. We just don't know it. And as we peel the layers, we become more conscious. We then remember and we connect to that. So hypnosis is a powerful tool to get to that. I connected to that council before the hypnosis, actually, and a lot of students also do that. So so these are it's just a part of your evolutionary understanding, and I think it's important for every human to train themselves in opening dialogue interdimensionally with these beings, so that we can again practice our free will and learn how to discern and keep moving. Because there's so much more. There's so much more. So I'll leave it there.
Very interesting. So you mentioned that they were like trying to recruit you to work and stuff. So do they like issue mandates or give guidance relevant to Earth's evolutionary path, today's climate, AI, geopolitics, etc.? Do they have like stuff like that go on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the problem with that is this, and I see this a lot when I see channelers on YouTube. There's so many channelers now, and they are channeling information from the Arcturians or the Pleiadians or some deceased being, some Cleopatra, things like this. The problem with that is that you have to pay attention to what the message is being shared. When the message is pressing urgency, when it's pressing fear, playing on your fear, playing on your emotions, and you have to learn to recognize that. Again, the only way you're going to recognize this is by getting familiar with the 0 point, because then you can understand manipulations of emotions very clearly. That's when I know that those are parasitic messages. And now we have hundreds of thousands of people that listen to that, and they let go their own internal connection to listen to the guidance of these channeled messages, which may or may not be in the harmonic order of the thousands of people that are listening. And remember that every time that we receive a directive or an information or an urgency, we put power and energy towards that creation. Because the fear that we feel, the emotional bioelectrical input that we put towards that message creates. So one interesting thing is that the shadow government and the military have used a lot of these kinds of channelers to weaponize the kind of information that's coming through. They manipulate information in a way to insert fear, confusion, disconnect from actual harmonic order, because the laws of the universe, unless you know them really well, can be inverted and confused very easily in little everyday dialogue. So most people don't have that education. In the old mystery schools, we were taught those laws of the universe, and we can recognize harmonic order very easily. Now we're completely confused. We're overloaded with informations, spirituality, this and that. And we don't know what's really up or down. So I believe that part of the UFO community and the disclosure movement has been utilized to weaponize the belief systems of people also by and through some of these channelers to put disinformation and fearmonger on certain circumstances and changes of the world, which we are going through, but in a way to bring disempowerment and fear. And that's something that we have to be careful. And I know that kind of behavior is completely real because I've seen it in my students, right? You have this grandiose invitation. You're going to channel Cleopatra, or you're going to channel Thoth, right? And then you just start speaking as Thoth and start communicating this expression. And then right in the insert of that communication, all of a sudden you're telling people, oh, by March 24th, there's going to be a meteor coming here and everyone has to start being afraid and preparing. And so you see, with an unpracticed mind and with a mind that is not in the 0 point, we insert our fears and our insecurities, our doubts, and those archetypes are played upon by these parasitic aspects of ourselves. And then we channel and we deliver the information with that filter. So this is why when I talk about channeling and accessing many dimensions and connecting with beings, energy hygiene is super important, because what I've noticed through my students when they are doing like abusing ayahuasca, abusing plant medicines in a way, for example, instead of helping, it actually deconstructs the energy field of the body. And then they have all kinds of entities and attachments. And again, they lose their ability to control and ground. So, there's many little elements here that we need to understand. But what it all comes down to is we need to learn to discern the difference between harmonic order, manipulation, and information that actually comes from the higher octave is always a very collective solution that brings harmonic order not only to the user is flourishing with energy. It is replenished when it receives the message, when it delivers the message. We are replenishing. We are in regeneration. It's a totally different frequency structure. And the kind of information that comes through is completely all-encompassing humanity. It's not just for one group or one certain people. You're looking for non-separatist, non-compartmentalized program thinking. You're looking for non-parasitism. You're looking for non-urgency, because time does not exist in these high dimensions. Everything is a unified field, and that is transmitted through these informations. Okay, so yeah, and then of course our understanding of love is another thing that most humans don't really know what love is. Love is not an emotion. It's an entire state of being from the 0 point from which emerges unconditional love, which is to see yourself as everything. And that state of understanding is something that it takes some time to cultivate that. And so the messages that we're receiving should resonate with that kind of mentality. So that's kind of some ways that I can say.
Okay, very interesting, because you had mentioned earlier that these council members seem to be made up of different fractals of yourself at these higher dimensions. So are ancient mythic systems like the Sumerian Anunnaki or Mayan councils linked to this council lineage, or is it purely made up of you?
They're one and the same. Okay? Hear me out. Why? Because we're one. We're one. There's no separation with anything. That's the thing. And that's why some of these things get really confused. Our mind wants to compartmentalize things. We are the Anunnakis that exist simultaneously in these older timelines on this planet Earth. We are the Arcturians that exist in this other planet. We are one, and through quantum non-locality and through entanglement, we can affect, and we change, and we move, and we interact and communicate with the contractual agreements of exchange with all of these beings simultaneously. So the invitation, when I say contract, it kind of creates this separate idea, right? Myself and the other. But in reality, they are fractals of our own subconscious. Why? And here's how I know this to be true. At least I can present this. In hypnotherapy, the majority of the clients will be regressed back to a past life where they were an Anunnaki, for example, okay? Or they were a Pleiadian, or they were an Arcturian. We begin to understand we are that consciousness. We've lived through that life. We were in Petra. We were working with energy. We were seeding life on this planet. That was our job. That's how we have this wisdom within us. Any information that you can access from your field, you have lived that. It's not just a random thing. Okay, and I will mention when you are in the connection to the higher self, right? So it's not just that you're imagining making things up. That's super different. For that, it's a different brain function. To imagine and make things up is very different than channeling and connecting to the field. Basically, you and your personality don't interfere in the channeling of that information. Okay, but when you're making things up, your personality is inserting yourself into those imaginary scenarios. So don't get confused. Imagination is very different than channeled information. Okay, but that being said, what's being channeled is everything that is within the many layers of your dimensions, 13 dimensions and under, everything that you're navigating in your dream state. Another part is that what you access in hypnotherapy is also what you're accessing in your dream state, which is also what you're accessing when you connect to these higher dimensional beings. So you might have dreams of being this master, and, so we have all these archetypes. Again, we are one. And remember that the lineage of the Anunnaki, for example, that's an archetype. It's an archetypal manifestation of a certain species of lineage of consciousness. And again, it has good and bad. Every single species is good and bad, positive, negative, dualistic construct. So that we access all that information.
Wow. It's very interesting you say that, because I have actually wondered if like they are us and we are them, like privately, just talking to myself. And you're actually saying that in reality, that is the truth. Because, and I guess you can say that we're actually doing this to ourselves because we did it in the past and we're doing it to ourselves now. So we are the biggest saboteurs of ourselves, really, when you actually think about it. So let's talk a little bit about the human connection. So with growing awareness, hybrid children and psychic families emerging, how is the hybrid mother program helping people integrate these experiences into real life?
Yeah, thank you. And as we segue into that topic, I just want to mention one thing, because there's a lot of confusion about what is real and what is in these etheric realms. And I need to clarify something, because we are going to experience contact with other species in our lifetime. So that being said, when you see the being, this alien being or this interdimensional being, it isn't interdimensional fundamentally in front of you, you're going to see that and you're like, dude, that's a separate person. That's not me. But again, what I'm talking about are the fundamental laws, construct of our architecture of our reality. And it's very important to understand that, because this is the preparation for the future. In the same way that you and I are one, Todd, like wherever you are in the world, wherever I am, we're one. And we're interconnected, and we are attracted by resonance. We meet and we find each other in this planet through frequency. The same way we meet strangers on the street, that's not random either. So you see, this self-organizing model of intelligence that is connecting consciousness and organisms together, it's operating in the same way interdimensionally. So we connect with the archetypes of Anunnakis, for example. We dream about them. We see them. We were them in the past life. We connect with them. We channel them. It is us in another dimension. And also, we still have the same kind of model of they are physical and non-physical. They can be manifested in some form of physicality in front of us. But we always need to remember that we're one with everything. So even when we start having a lot of ships showing up in the sky with all of these beings coming in, we need to remember that, because that level of understanding is to understand the unity consciousness of things. This is like the new model of humanity, is to understand unity consciousness, that we are one. Okay, so talking about the hybridization program, that being said, the hybridization program was called a program by the shadow government because there are different kinds of hybrid programs. There is the military program, there is parasitic programs, and then there are high dimensional programs, and then there's the Earth program. Okay, so the military is focused on creating clones and the manipulation of psychic abilities through genetic bloodlines. Okay. And there is a form of a silent eugenics program that is being carried out through the reproduction system globally, through humanity, through this shadow system. And their interest is to create the transhumanist agenda, cloning, and also control and manipulate certain ethnic groups. Everything, the structure of our societal systems through genetics. Okay. And I can go deeper into that topic. We talked on some of that today, but the silent eugenics program is part of the hybridization program because essentially they are creating new humans by editing epigenetically what we're eating, the air that we're breathing, the chemicals that surround us and affect our DNA, disable and deconstruct the DNA in our etheric abilities, water that we're drinking, and I mean, just the emotional and religious concepts of spiritual understanding. Okay, so the hybridization program with interdimensionals, again, there's parasitic and there's high vibration. The parasitic is designed to create fractals of souls that can be utilized for parasitic purposes. Okay, so these are created through trauma, so it can be abuse, and these are also created through pain and suffering. Okay, so also artificial insemination. The more that the child is created through artificial forms and unconditionally loving environment, the DNA is less activated of the organism. This organism can either be etheric, living on a UFO, hybrid ship, or incarnating into the planet. As a rule, when it's from trauma, the DNA becomes deactivated. And so we have bloodlines on this earth that have been psychic, what have been called Magdalene bloodlines or like Christic bloodlines, which is descendants of Jesus Christ, which is just to say bloodlines that were super highly activated. That means highly conductive bloodlines, bloodlines that have reached integration of the higher self, higher faculties, intuition. Let's say those Jedi abilities, the manifestation and the cultivation of that for many generations creates a different genetic structure, weight, heaviness, density to a bloodline. And these bloodlines are super valuable because they are portals to, again, many species, many bloodlines, many worlds of information. So the genetic manipulation of these bloodlines have been the agenda of these kinds of silent eugenic programs. Okay, so that's the terrestrial program. And so the parasitism is to limit the expansion of this DNA as much as possible, whether it's through eugenics epigenetics, or whether it's through trauma, things like that. Now, the higher vibrational hybrid program is the creation of a soul. The purpose of that is to create a soul. And this is carried out etherically in dream state, the human with a being or a light being or etheric being in an environment of love. That love is induced in both organisms at the time of conception to create the baby. Okay. And the other aspect is humans on this earth are united, not randomly, even if it's a one-night stand, through this reorganizing system to create, again, through love, another being. Okay, so some of those aspects are manipulated from this system, and some of them are organically orchestrated. Okay, and the third, which is the creation of our children on this planet. So the children that we are bringing and birthing into this planet is another hybridization program, is another hybridization system, I should say. And it is organized by the self-organization of the planet Earth. The planet Earth organizes every human based on its frequency in alignment with grid lines of the Earth, your where you were born, where you live. All of that is part of alignment and the intelligence of this planet Earth. And so the children that we birth into this planet, they are essentially holding these ancestral bloodlines and starseed lineages. And the more the child is created with pure love, or in the ancient mystery schools, it was practiced alchemical sex. And that would be the training of the body from lust into pure love. Okay, so totally different. Because when a child is created from lust, the two humans are actually centrifugal energy systems. Okay, so energy depletion through lust. The regathering of energy in unconditional self-love, unconditional union, which is what they call the alchemical marriage. So in etheric studies and in the mystery schools, the alchemical marriage is first starting internally, right? So you marry your feminine, masculine energies, and now you become this system, right? You have the Kundalini awakenings, you have these expansiveness and clearing of your energy body. You become highly conductive. So when you put two people like this that cultivate these energy systems to create a human, that DNA is highly conductive. Once again, the child is born with a lot of their memory. So these are kids that are being born nowadays that remember their past lives. And because we're entering into a new era, right, into this ninth octave, more children are already being born like that. Those are the hybrids that have been created by these higher dimensional systems. Okay, so they remember their past lives, they remember future lives, they have an understanding of advanced mathematics, advanced astrophysics. I see them all the time on these TikToks and Instagrams, these little kids that are super activated, and they are like savants. And then we also have children from the spectrum, which, by the way, are also hybrid children. They have telepathic abilities. They are savants in different areas, okay? So that is basically the systems of hybridization.
Wow. The children today definitely are becoming much smarter than we were when we were their age, that's for sure. And it's going to be fascinating to see in another 20 years what the children are like based on the trajectory we are going. I guess we're still at the choice stage, and depending on what choice we make as humanity will determine the brilliance or not so brilliance of the children to come. So with the growing awareness, hybrid children and psychic families are emerging. So how is the hybrid mother program helping people integrate these experiences into real life?
So basically, my job is to just help people come back to peace, because a lot of times with these experiences, I mean, you start having dreams that, you're having babies on another planet or another craft or something, and then in my case, for example, I became pregnant when I was a virgin, and I also became pregnant when I was not sexually active. And then I went through that whole hormonal process, and then resulting in nothing. The child was basically removed in a dream. But that dream translated into my body now no longer being pregnant, right? So this is something that happens to a lot of men and women around the world. They have these anomalous pregnancies, and it's not new. We have the divine conception from Mary, and we have millions of stories through history of conception in this way. And then we can go all the way back to the original story of the Book of Enoch and whatnot, the stories in which we are merging with these beings, right? So my job is to help people understand how to understand the contractual agreements that we have made in order to create these beings. Even though we have parasitic experiences, we have participated in them unconsciously when we were in dormant state, when we were not physically present in our body, when we were in states of fear, depression. We don't really understand the effect that when we go into depression, we are very highly parasitized in the etheric realms, because we basically want to let go of life. We don't want to be home. We don't want to take responsibility for our creation. We don't want to be home. And so that translates in the etheric realms to be open to parasitism. So in that sense, we participate in some of these programs without knowing it. also our ignorance about sex, because in our culture, sex is made to be shameful, taboo, and that is psychologically manipulated to turn into something bad. And that belief system of sex is something that is it's very destructive for the human race. We are raised with shame, with guilt, with all kinds of mixed emotions that are causing diseases, right? And also men are becoming more infertile. And there's many reasons for that. We can't go into all that right now, but it's part of this eugenics program. Okay. So that's something that is very much manipulated on. So understanding these parts of ourselves will help us understand our participation. For many young women, our sexuality is played upon. We are told that we are told that we have to dress a certain way, look a certain way, act a certain way. And because we're not taught about that, that kind of behavior then becomes unconsciously parasitized. With youth getting completely into drugs, alcohol, things like this, even more so, we have absolutely no power over our free will and what we're allowing to do. A lot of the younger women that come to me from these programs have gone through phases of alcoholism or drugs, and then all of a sudden begin to have memories again of having these kinds of activities, right? So these are things that we have to understand. The healing process is to come back to our sovereignty, come back into this body, learn to feel safe in this body, learn to feel empowered in this body, and not be afraid of the unknown. Because the more that we embody the fear of the unknown, the less control you have over yourself, and that's over everything, right? So, and from the positive perspective, allowing people to understand that what we are creating, the children that we create, this is both men and women, men also are in these programs, nothing belongs to us, because that's also another traumatic point of the hybridization program. We meet our children, and then we're very emotional that we can't be with them, right? Or we can't, love them or just interact with them, because that's not what the hybridization program is for. We need to understand that we are one and we are interconnected with everything through the field all the time. So that should help us kind of let go of this unnecessary attachment and bring peace into our lives so that we can do what we came here to do. The most powerful thing about the hybridization to know is that if we alchemize ourselves and we become a 0 point, highly conductive beings of unconditional love, we can affect all of our creations, our children, our family, our ancestral lineage, our bloodlines, our etheric aspects of ourselves, our etheric relatives, aspects of ourselves. Everything is shifting through our frequency. That is how powerful the human is. So, in other words, there is no victimization in these systems. The programs of hybridization are the natural sustainability of this matrix. You can choose to do that consciously for healing of this planet, or you can choose to do it parasitically. The choice is yours. That's where the free will lies. So my job is to teach people, train people those tools to embody that, and also heal any kind of trauma that may have come from these kinds of experiences, because they can be traumatizing to us, because our concept of reproductions and stuff like that, we're very we have no idea what is a potential with all that energy. So
Okay, so among the mothers or experiencers you've worked with, what are some of the most unexpected or powerful transformations that have taken place?
I mean, it's such a huge topic. Powerful transmissions, like what have they channeled, you mean? These hybrid parents?
Or transformations?
Transformations? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that across the board, what I've noticed with my students is that their understanding of this nature of reality and creation is changing. And I really try to put a lot of free content out there. I put a lot of time in making these videos that can go deep into these topics, because our human life, the life that we're living with our families and friends and our work and everything that's happening, it is not separate from the things that we're experiencing in our dream state. And I think the number one thing to take away from this is to understand our free will and our creative potential in all dimensions is important. How? Through your lucidity. When you become lucid in dream state, that's a reflection of the lucidity that you're embodying in your waking state. And so what I have seen people do is go from PTSD trauma of even living life. And by the way, again, those traumatic experiences happen to people that have most trauma. And we didn't talk about this, but a lot of the people that experience trauma are usually involved in military programs. Okay, so usually families that are military families, every time they have a lot of these kinds of parasitic experiences. So again, cleaning up the ancestral lineage, cleaning up the trauma, no longer embodying that frequency so that you're not experiencing that. And I see that a lot with my students. Another phenomena that happens in the contact experience is that as soon as they start to talk about their experiences or become more open about that, sometimes they experience rejection from family. So they feel very isolated. They feel like they can't talk to anyone. And that's really toxic. That's actually one of the largest traumas. Gabor Mate talks a lot about this. Isolation is the number one reason for all abuse and trauma. We don't feel that we can communicate what we're experiencing. So these support groups are designed for that. And a lot of people heal simply from telling their story, because now they don't feel like they're going crazy or they're nuts or they're the only ones that are having those experiences. So I also want to mention, this kind of phenomena, like, it's not new. It's been happening since the beginning of time, whether we were interacting with angelic beings or demons or parasites or whatever they've called it through history. We are very proactive in our dream state with interdimensional beings. And so now that we're talking about disclosure, and the government has called them biologics, right? So these unknown biologics, foreign biologics, we have to get ready to understand that will be manifest, and we will see that in our time. So, so the veil is thinning. I think just to resume, the largest takeaway is what I see in my clients is that they're taking back their creative power. And the healing that they experience through the hybrid programs and the trauma that they're dealing is changing their lives. So, because again, it's all one, right? So unworthiness, belief systems, sexual abuse as a child, physical abuse, relationship problems, all of those go hand in hand with parasitic experiences. So the healing of one is the healing of the other. So their lives are changing, and they are learning how to regain their energetic control. Yeah.
Okay, so for listeners who are parents or caregivers, what are the subtle signs of a starseed or psychic child they may be overlooking?
That's a beautiful question. I think that, first of all, we have become desensitized to emotional sensitivity. These children are highly emotionally sensitive. Okay, so they feel and they know everything that you are feeling. And more through, I've been doing this for like 25 years now, working with adults and children, meditating and learning how to engage in their family dynamics. Children are becoming more sensitive. So there are many waves of children. Dolores Cannon talked about that, the rainbow children, crystal children, indigo children. That's one way to look at how the self-organization of the new waves of hybrids are coming in. So of course that continues. We're having more children coming in. And every time they come in with more sensitivity, this means that they can feel everything, and they are already highly intuitive. They can feel your emotions. They can feel your thoughts. you can't really hide anything from a child. A child won't tell you directly because they won't know how to communicate that to you. But understand that the child starts to embody your emotional state since the gestation process. So, 9 months in the womb, you're already programming the child with the strongest filter of perception in the womb, right? So we have a lot of trauma that I work with in DNA reprogramming is in the womb with most people. They're experiencing the mother's feeling of overwhelm, unworthiness, insecurity, fear, not knowing if dad is going to be there, when the baby comes, or if the dad will be able to handle the stress. Those kinds of things are implanted into the child. And as souls, we choose these families. We choose that mother. We choose that father. So we are kind of coming in through frequency to experience that. So I think like part of the work that we're doing is basically healing all of that, right? It's the healing process of that. And children, they remember their womb memories pretty vividly. So we want to work with them and help them regulate their nervous system, teach them about processing emotions. So as soon as you start to see a child that is, if they have fits, if they have a hard time communicating, start to notice if maybe their communications are way more sensitive. Maybe they're picking up emotions in a much more subtle way. And for a lot of cases, these kids are like living in suffering because, the parents don't know that. And sometimes they get more frustrated and angry, and the child doesn't know how to communicate that they're feeling absolutely everything. So it's important to understand that sensitivity first. Secondly, these children are highly telepathic as well. So the communication will be through thought. And usually this communication happens more easily with the parent that's most present and most their caregiver. But the communication will be telepathic. A person that really helped research that was telepathy tapes that talked about autistic children, nonverbal autistic children that are having telepathic communication. So there's some amazing research and support on that. But a lot of children these days are actually having that ability as well, not just only from the spectrum. So that means that we have to be mindful of, again, our communication, our nonverbal communication actually communicates to children more powerfully than the words that we're speaking. Third, they're super highly creative. So if you see children that have a lot of need for expression, attention to color, their language is through colors, shapes, and sounds. So things like sound baths or vibrational frequency medicine is super helpful for these children because they operate in that vibrational range. And it can also soothe a lot of their distress, help them process emotionally. And then, in terms of creativity, usually they have some kind of creative outlet. It's important to pay attention to the creative outlets that they're asking for or needing, or even just offering them some different various creative outlets. What I find with hybrid children in these families is that they always seem to have some kind of artistic inclination, because for them, that artistic inclination, whether it's through colors or shapes, they communicate. A lot of the children have this affinity to spheres and circles, for example. I've seen this time and time again. These children just want to paint circles and draw circles and things like that. And, I actually experienced that myself in my own art. And it's really weird because it's like a language. It's like an unspoken language of the universe, the spherical model of creation. And somehow these children are picking up on that. Another thing is their dreams, right? So we want to pay attention to what they're dreaming and maybe try to help them, depending on how old they are, to cultivate dream journals or drawing dream journals. They can draw their dreams if they can't write them yet. But essentially, pay attention to what they're dreaming. Allow them time to process those dreams. Talk to them about their dreams so that you can kind of understand what's happening. The dreams of a child can tell you a lot about their contractual agreements, what they're here to do, what are their limitations. And we can help support them with that, right? Because our dreams are our most powerful communication system to the etheric aspects of ourselves. And so they help us understand whether we are in trouble, or we need to pay attention to our emotions, or healing, or take time away from technology. And finally, I will talk about technology. These children are so psychically and advanced that their ease of using technology and AI will be like this. There will be no learning curve, because they are already at that computational etheric level where they can use technology very easily. And we're seeing that. We're seeing kids that are like 1 year old, 2 years old, using the iPad like you. And it's just alarming, but it's innate part of them, you see. So that's something that we need to understand, and also create space between, help them use that technology with dedicated times. Because what happens is the deconstruction of their energetic field. The more they're in the presence of technology, the more the energetic field gets distorted. So we need to take them into nature, have them connect with nature as much as possible. This will also help regulate them and remember their memories. Okay. And then final thing that I will say is imaginary friends, or any time that they see things, and then we may have the tendency to be like, no, that's not true, or no, that's not there. It doesn't mean to just completely move along with, a psychosis or just an imagination of things, but just carefully pay attention, mindfully, compassionately pay attention to what they are communicating, because these children can see more than us. And so what happens a lot of times is that we dismiss that, and then it kills in them the feeling that it's safe to express what they're seeing. And that sets them back years of like intuitive development. And so we need to understand that intuition development should be one of the primary things that we focus on with these kids, because they are super intuitive, and we have to develop that with games, intuitive games, flashcards, whatever it is. You can make it really fun. So.
Very interesting, because like I said, I think the kids, they are much more talented than us, but the things that you laid out just now, the one that strikes me the most is imaginary friends, because my sister had an imaginary friend when we were young. And basically, she said to me that she always felt like there was a presence there with her all the time, even in some of the most, I wouldn't say dangerous, but situations, like if she's like feeling a bit like uneasy, like if she had having to walk home from the train station or anything like that, she would feel like, there's something there. She can't explain it, but it will always be like presence, So if someone listening right now is feeling lost, disconnected, or like they're waking up but unsure where to begin, what's the very first step you would encourage them to take?
Okay, so number one thing is train yourself to love yourself. And what does that mean? Most of our loneliness and feeling of disconnect is that we don't feel that we have someone that can hear us, acknowledge us, validate us, love us, give us affection. So these are the core main traumas that most people have. Like almost everyone has these subconsciously. We have a need for validation, a need for confirmation. That is a natural part of us, but that's also expanded in us that have more trauma. So the number one thing is to return back to yourself, ground yourself, be fully in your body. Like, are you aware of your back of your body? Are you aware of your, 360 degree? Imagine a bubble around you and make that bubble solid, seal any holes, use your imagination as a tool to help you work with your intuitive energy field. And ground yourself, connect to earth. If you need to go into nature to remember what that feels like again, go into nature, go into a forest, go to a park, and then realign your body. That will help you. And you carry that nice energy that cleans your energy field back home. declutter your house. Okay, so clean up your energetic space, because the more chaos you have around you, that's a direct reflection of your mind. Your environment is a direct reflection of your mind. So organize your life, clear out the clutter, and then allow yourself time to reconnect with yourself in your clean space. This is also a way to alchemize parasitism in yourself and in your environment, whether it's etheric, physical, or in yourself. And finally, that all of these things that I'm mentioning are the embodiment of self-love, because when you are fully in body, fully in the present moment, you can recognize what your needs are. So as soon as you start feeling lonely, you begin to literally hug yourself, be there for yourself, be present in yourself, listen to yourself. What is it that you need in that moment? What do you need support in? What would fulfill you? And listen to that, and carry that out without ignoring it or desensitizing yourself from your internal voice. Most people feel alone because they have desensitized themselves from their internal voice. So we have to reestablish that connection and that communication and learn how to act on the needs of the internal self. And this will usually resolve the majority of that depression. Once you are there for yourself and you fill yourself with love, with affection, with presence, you will feel more motivated to do things, to carry your life out, to get clarity in the direction that you need to go. Finally, meditation, right? Meditation should be mandatory in addition to taking a shower every day, brushing your teeth, washing your face, washing your hands. A meditation is basically a way of life. And all it requires you is to be observant in the present moment. So you can be observant in the present moment for an hour a day, or you can do it 5 minutes throughout your day, or all the time throughout your day. All of those are meditations. So the more you implement that, you're going to come into your power. You're going to open that immediately will allow you to open space for the feeling of love and fulfillment in everything that you do. So those are some pretty, yeah.
Okay, so looking back on your journey from abduction experiencer to therapist and teacher, what truth do you wish every human being could integrate before they leave this earth?
Wow, that's a big question. I think the most powerful takeaway and the basic thing that every mystic has repeated over and over again is that in the present moment, the power of the present moment is not only your free will, but it's also the gateway to awe, to the feelings of awe and wonderment. We as humans live an entire lifetime in the pursuit of an orgasm. Okay, subconsciously, we don't realize, but we are seeking pleasure in many different ways. And what we seek through an orgasm and through the pleasure is the reconnection to the divine. That's actually what we're looking for. Because when a human experiences an orgasm, it's as if the body dissolves and we become one with all. That feeling and sensation is achieved through the connection of the divine, but very few people know that. And all of these ancient mystery schools, that's what they taught. That's what they taught to master. And basically the continuous living in that state of orgasmic connection to the divine is the bliss state. From that state, you are so powerful. Your body literally cannot embody illness in that state, biochemically, bioelectrically, geometrically. Okay. So the human needs to understand that about themselves. And the second part is essentially the fear of death. So if I were to say two little things that equate to one thing, which is the embodiment of harmony within themselves, harmonic order, is that it's the embodiment of the divine, the reconnection to the divine, and understanding that you are not finite at all in any way. No matter how hard you want to try, you are not finite. So even when our body dies and it's tired and we're ready to leave this planet Earth, we are infinite beings and infinite potential. So the sooner we understand that, the sooner we can allow ourselves to embody the bliss state. And in our society, we are desensitized from those feelings that make us believe that we're going to be fragile. But in reality, fear, survival is more fragile than the embodiment of bliss. Bliss is actually the most powerful state that a human can embody, because we have in a bliss state a connection to the infinite knowing, the field, the Akashic records. You remember who you are, you remember what you're here to do, you're on your path, and you can love, which allows you to be healthy, incredible immune system, bioelectrical memory, and manifestation ability. So all of the gifts and the powers that the human has are in that bliss, in that union to the divine. And yeah, this is what I would advise, to learn how to embody that.
Geraldine, wow, what an awesome conversation it has been today. I have learned a lot. I have enjoyed talking to you. Like I said to you, I got up this morning and I was very excited to talk to you, because I do love talking to you, but I love what I do. So with that being said, please tell the lovely listeners at the Conscious Man 7 podcast where they can find you. Tell us about any new things that you have going, anything you'd like to promote, retreats, anything you want to plug, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much, Todd. It was such an honor to be here with you. Thank you for your amazing questions and holding space. You're amazing. And so if you guys want to reach out with me, get a hypnotherapy or DNA reprogramming, you can reach me at geraldineorozco.com. And if you guys want to join my support group, it's at hybridmother.com. I have a YouTube channel, Geraldine Orozco, which you can join and watch all the free content. Every week I have a show on there called Self-Love Sundays. I'm also going to be teaching a class this weekend on it's a master class on emotional process and bioelectrical manifestation. So really great class for you to check out. I'm also going to be going to Greece and Turkey in March, and I would love to invite you if you would like to come. It is a cruise through Greece and Turkey, looking at all the ancient sites and power vortex points, with a bunch of amazing speakers, including Laura Eisenhower, Neil Gower, and a bunch of amazing other ones that you can check the link on my website. But please do join me. Also, on August 3rd, I'm going to be speaking at the Light and Dark Conference on Portal to Ascension with Neil Gower. So I invite you to check that out as well. Thank you so much. It was an honor to be here.
Yes, Geraldine, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you, and I always enjoy talking to you, to be honest with you. And guys, as Geraldine talked about traumas and fears and stuff like that, I can help you to get into shape, help you to remove your fears and traumas through some of my coaching, some of the modalities that she talks about. I also implement in my training programs. So if you would like to get into the best shape of your life, you would like to grow mentally, spiritually, and obviously physically, hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 or my name Todd Cave on Facebook, and let's see if you're a good fit for the Compound Body Training Program. And if you would like to support this podcast, you can do that by visiting our merch store. We have some cool tank tops, hoodies, shirts, and sweats. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And I have on one of the shirts today is the Todd and Me collection. So if you would like to support us and help us on this journey that we're on, it helps us out with editing and also to spend some time researching to get some awesome guests like Geraldine to come on. And if you would like to help to remove some fears and traumas, I can help you to get some magic mushrooms. So if you would like to, start the spiritual process, or you're on a spiritual journey and would like some help with your fears and traumas, hit me up on my Instagram, also at Adriano_246, or my name Todd Cave on Facebook, and let's see if I can help you. And Geraldine, thank you for bringing such depth, clarity, and multidimensional perspective to this conversation. To our listeners, if this episode expanded your mind or opened your heart, share it with someone in your circle who's on their awakening journey. And remember to follow Geraldine's work, especially at hybridmother.com, her YouTube channel with the name Geraldine Orozco, and geraldineorozco.com is her main site for upcoming retreats, DNA healing workshops, and interdimensional guidance. This is the Conscious Man 7 podcast, where we go way beyond the veil like we did today. We challenge what they tell us and the awakened ones, and we help the awakened ones find their voice. And until the next time, stay conscious, stay curious, and keep evolving. Geraldine, many thanks again for coming on to the show. I honestly, again, like I say, love talking to you. And don't forget, guys, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep being the change you want to see. This has been another episode for the Conscious Man 7 podcast. Speak to you soon. Cheers and namaste.